Hello there, so we're here with Unbound Hoopa, the back sprite. We have the front sprite too actually. I've already completed this is from scratch, so we have the outline and flats as you can see done, and we're gonna go through the shading for this back sprite. Well, shading is super important. You're gonna see this transform this horrifying outline flat into something quite akin to the front sprite. So let's get started. So you can see I have my palette selected. It's sitting there between the two sprites already. I'm just going to be drawing colors from that. In order to start, I'm just going to fill in some shades in places that I know will be dark. Now, with Pokemon battles and sprites, usually the light source for the graphic is in the center of the battle. So with the back sprite, the back of the Pokemon is going to be dark. You can see this in the in-game models on X and Y and Auras as well. So we're following that logic. Obviously some light's going to trim onto the edges here, so I'm playing with that a bit. But once we have our second shade set, I'm going to take our next color, which is this this darkest shade of pink or whatever. I'm going to be using that as another shade, as well as you'll notice I'm using it to color over the outline of the lighter parts, like the parts of the pink that are hit by the light, and that really just helps it blend in so that the outlines don't stand out so much, especially when they're against lighter shades. In order to help with that too, another thing we do is we use this darkest shade to blend right in directly, just put it in corners and such, so that the black outline we have is not as obtrusive. So we're coming up, we're going to have this finished. I'm going to move on to the blue shortly. The blue's going to be a little rough because, to be quite frank, I don't know, especially on this bottom part of Hoopa, I don't know what shape Hoopa's butt is. The models haven't been captured very well, and obviously this thing isn't totally released yet. So that makes spriting it kind of difficult. I've made do with what I can by finding some GIFs online and freezing them. So that's a mess. Anyway, we got through it. So you can see I'm doing the same thing with this darkest blade of shade of blue. Same thing. I'm letting it fade into the black. So you can see that this already looks way smoother than when we began. We're moving on to the black now. The horn is kind of a mess. But we fixed that up. You'll note that I'm also touching up the outlines as I go, which is perfectly fine. Like, the outline I made before is not perfect by any means. It doesn't need to be, quite frankly, because then we go through this step and it ends up looking pretty good nonetheless. So moving on to the rings now, or not the rings, but the yellow, metallic, whatever. One tip I have for working with like metallic appearances is to make sure that you have a good contrast between your light and dark shades when you take a palette. So you'll notice even though the yellow is a relatively small area of color compared to how much space the blue and pink takes up, whereas I'm only using 3 shades for the pink, I'm not afraid to use 4 for the metallic yellow, because it's going to be more reflective, and having that white shade contrasted against the darker golden shade really helps it give it that shine appearance. You can see I'm putting these on the that shine on the rings around the arms and the top. And the arms themselves are an excellent example of how shading takes something that looks hideous and makes it into something halfway decent. So I think I'm going to be moving into shading the skin of the arms now, and yeah, here we go. So these flat appearances look disgusting. Now once we go over the shading, they actually look not only presentable, but hey, halfway good. At least for a Pokemon that's detached to all 6 of its arms. What are we going to do? So we're coming up on the close here. This looks pretty quick, but this all took a little more than an hour for me to go through. Hopefully this was helpful to you in some way. And this is the development of Reborn for a while we make all the new Mega Sprites and Hoopa. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around.